Hello and welcome. Today we're diving into a really cool tool for visualizing something we all struggle with, time. Yep, we're going to untangle the clock itself with something called a timing diagram.
Okay, let's start with the problem we all had. You click a link, you see that little spinner go round and round, and you wait, and you wait. But what is actually happening behind the scenes in those few seconds?
So we're going to peel back the curtain on that loading screen, because it turns out a single second online is absolutely packed with action.
So that one little click, it kicks off this incredible chain reaction. First, your computer has to find the website's real address. That's called DNS resolution. You can think of it like looking up a name in a massive global phone book for the entire internet. Now, that alone can take anywhere from a single millisecond to, several seconds. Then, the server on the other end has to figure out your request, grab all the data, send it back across the web, and only then can your browser start to build the page you actually see.
It's really like a relay race with a bunch of different runners. You've got your browser, the network, the server, and every single one has its own deadline. So trying to understand the whole thing, well, you need a special kind of map for that.
And to map out this crazy race against the clock, we need a very specific kind of tool. So it's time to introduce the hero of our story today, the timing diagram.
At its heart, a timing diagram isn't some scary, complex engineering chart. Honestly, you should think of it more like a story map, but for time. It lets us see all the different players in a process and what they're up to as time marches forward. And here's the crucial part. Unlike other diagrams that might just show you the order of things, timing diagrams are laser-focused on when stuff happens. Down to the millisecond. They show you exactly how one event triggers the next.
All right, so now that we kind of get what it is, let's break down how it actually works. It's built from just a few simple core ideas.
You can really think of building one of these like you're telling a story in 4 steps. First, you pick your characters. Then, you describe what they're doing. After that, you show how they talk to each other. And finally, you add the rules of the game.
First up, we have the lifeline. And that's just a fancy word for one of the individual players in our process. So in our website example, the web browser is one lifeline and the server is another. Each one gets its own lane in the diagram.
And of course, a lifeline isn't just sitting there doing nothing. It changes its state over time. So for example, your browser lifeline might start in a requesting state, then move to receiving data, and finally end up in a rendering page state. It's just showing what it's busy doing at any given moment.
Now, constraints. These are the rules of the game. They're the non-negotiables. They basically set the boundaries for our story, and they come in 2 main flavors that are really important to tell apart.
And this slide just illustrates the difference perfectly. A duration constraint is all about a length of time, like saying ice has to melt in 1 to 6 minutes. A time constraint, though, that's about a specific point, or a window in time, like saying you have to wake up between 5:40 and 6 a.m. One is how long, the other is when. So, we've got our characters, we know what they're doing, but what happens when one of them is done? When their part in the story is finished. How do you show that?
It's actually beautifully simple. The end of a lifeline's journey is just marked with a big cross and X. This is called a destruction occurrence, and it just means that's it, no more events for this participant, it's the end of the road.
Okay, that's enough theory. Let's see how all these building blocks come together to tell some pretty fascinating stories out in the real world. We'll start with something you might have in your kitchen right this second, because even a simple coffee pot has to follow some pretty strict rules about time. A timing diagram for a coffee pot would show these simple but super critical rules. There's a duration constraint. The hot plate has to wait at least 10 seconds after the pump starts. And there's another one. Once the pump is done, the hot plate can only stay on for a maximum of 15 minutes before it has to shut off. It's a simple map that makes sure the appliance works safely.
Okay, let's look at something a bit more business-focused. What happens when you've got 2 people who need the same thing, but one of them is a VIP who pays for better service? Here's where a timing diagram is so useful. The Platinum user has a very strict time constraint. Their request, maybe it's a stock trade, has to happen within 10 time units. Guaranteed. The Gold user, well, they don't get that guarantee. So the diagram helps engineers figure out how to build a system that always prioritizes that Platinum request to make sure it hits its critical deadline.
But this tool isn't just for technology, and this is where it gets really interesting. Let's broaden the scope, like way out, and see how it's used in medicine to understand things that happen over decades.
This is just a really powerful way to use this idea. A timing diagram can map out the long-term progression of a disease like Alzheimer's. You can visualize the different stages, how long they typically last, and the entire timeline of the disease, which, as you can see, can be anywhere from 8 to 20 years. It gives you a clear, high-level map for an incredibly complex human journey.
So, we've gone from a website loading in a few seconds to a coffee pot brewing in minutes, all the way to a disease that progresses over decades. So let's zoom out and ask, what's the real point of thinking this way?
You know, the real power here is that a timing diagram is so much more than a tool for engineers. It's a mental model. It's a way of thinking that anyone can use to understand any complex process where timing is everything. It forces you to be clear by asking, who are the players, what are they doing, and most importantly, when are they doing it? So I'll just leave you with this question. What complex process in your life could be a little bit clearer, a little less tangled, if you just took a moment to map it out over time?